Remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment on all of the content on this channel. And I please do remember to subscribe also, because this will enable me to continue to bring you thought-provoking, relevant, inspirational, and just interviews that you just enjoy to watch. So, hi everyone. Today I'm going to be interviewing Levi Roots. Levi, thank you so much for coming onto the platform.
Hi there, Micah, and big respect in every aspect, blessings and prospect to men's talk.
Thank you. You were born in Clarendon, Jamaica, and by the age of 11, you migrated to the UK. And then in your early 20s, you were in and out of prison. So please just tell us about your early life and growing up and the challenges you faced.
It was a time of discovery, not just for myself, but also for a whole generation of people, because my parents, who were the generations of the Windrush, had only just arrived, you know, maybe 10 years or so before myself. Most people. In the 60s, I arrived 1969. Just as the moon landing was going on. I landed as well. Yes, and my parents were just about learning to be in this own new country, because the key thing for those people who I see as the greatest entrepreneur that, us as Black people has ever, send out to the world, were the people of that generation that was coming to a new world, didn't know that they were going where they were going. There was no internet or anything like that. It was just a dream that they wanted to work as hard as they can to send for their kids one at a time, to give them an education. That was it. And of course, I was one of these children. I was the youngest of my family, which it took me a bit of a time to come over, because in those days, I suppose the science was to send for the elder kids first, and I think it was like that for most families coming from the Caribbean, so they can educate themselves in school, and then maybe to get a job quicker, and then to help the family as well with work, because that's what it was back then. And the smaller child wasn't really thought about that back then until his time was to come. So unfortunately, or fortunately for me, because it was the time I got to spend with my grandma, while my family was here trying to build a home, and some of my other brothers and sisters were coming over before myself. So I got that time to spend with this wonderful woman who knew that I perhaps needed a little bit more attention than others. I was a bit wayward as a young boy, was running around as a 5-year-old boy. It is, the story of me in Clarendon is legendary as a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old boy running around in the community, this very small sugarcane community in Jamaica. And eventually my time came when I had to sort of, pull myself away from this beautiful woman that was teaching me about food and about the natural world and all the things she knew as a, as a woman, back then she was in her perhaps in her 40s or 50s when I left Jamaica. So she didn't have much education herself, but she knew about food. She knew how to cook. She knew how to tell me about life, and she knew music, because she was a fantastic singer in the Baptist church. So she sort of harmed me with everything that she knew, which was the important things of life as a young boy then, coming to a whole new country, and you're 10 years old, and she equipped me with these great things. And eventually I came over and struggled a lot to fit in. Like I said, just like my parents were struggling to get a job, and with all the racism that was going on back then, there was no dogs, no blacks, no Irish, that type of thing. Very difficult to get jobs, to get work. So they were facing their own problems. But as kids, so were we, because we had to be running away from skinheads, and racism was a thing now that I'd never experienced as a kid growing up. I didn't know about it in Jamaica. It wasn't there. And all of a sudden, you're just dropped in this place where, some skinhead white guys is chasing you down, trying to rip your head off, and you're only a school kid just arrived from the Caribbean. And you're thinking, what? Where's this from? And you have to protect yourself against that. So it was a very much a learning curve, a discovering a whole new world. Unlike my kids now who, they leave school and get onto college and all they have to face is just this system. There isn't your neighbor or the guy down the road who's chasing you, trying to rip your head off, which was like back then. So it's very difficult for me growing up back then. So went through a lot of problems, as you mentioned then, prisons and going into Her Majesty's pleasure and having to find myself while I'm there. So even though I may look down at that part of my life, I perhaps have been the worst, and I wouldn't recommend that for anybody to go through those things, to be able to end up in those places. But for me personally, that's where my salvation came. That's where my awakening came to say, okay, you've got to wake up from where you are. This is not what your grandmother sent you over to do. But you need to wake up and find the true you, the real you, because that's not you in prison really there. That's the kind of vibe that I was getting when I ended up in those places. And I really wanted to change. I wanted to do it while I was there. And I wanted to know that when I came out, I'm a complete different person from what I was in there. I went in as Keith Graham, which is a Scottish name. And I used to look in the mirror when I was in school and thinking, I don't look like Scottish. Where do I get this name from? I need to get rid of this name and find the true me. And so when I was inside, I actually started to investigate that. Who am I? Am I Keith Valentine Graham, the name that my father gave me? And 90% of Jamaicans are named after Scottish people. And you are who your name is. I had to find who I am. And it's as a Rasta man while I was in prison that I realized that I'm not Scottish and that I'm African via Jamaica. And I need to express the Levi Roots, the music man, the food man, and had all this culture that my grandma had given me. I wanted to come out and express this new me. And that's how I found the Levi Roots, who I am now.
Wow, that is extremely powerful and really inspiring. Following on from that, it is customary to see Reggae Reggae sauce on supermarket shelves. How did you discover your love for cooking?
Well, again, it's that sort of change. I came out this new me, and I knew music had been my life before that. Because most people that knows the name Levi Roots from the '70s is from my involvement in sound systems and worked my way through the music business. But I felt that I wanted to express, the memories of my grandma and about Caribbean food and this plan B that I had. I knew that I felt like that's what I wanted to do. I wasn't just made to be singing reggae roots and culture songs, but not really getting the message that I think I was born to give, which is this preachings about Caribbean food and about healthy food and about your health is your wealth and all that kind of stuff that I've been trying to say. And I knew that I had to find a different way to get that across. And that's when, because the music wasn't really working, so I thought the plan B, which was the food and my grandmother's story, and not just to come with a sauce, but come with a purpose, and come with who I am. I didn't want to sell the sauce. I refused just to sell the sauce. I wanted to sell Levi Roots. And that's why it took me so long to make it, because my own people in my local Brixton, where I still live now, didn't really get it at first when I tried to sell, when I was saying, put some music in the food. It's not about what's in the sauce. It's about what I want to tell you and my expressions and everything like that. But eventually they did get it. I think they got it now.
Yeah, thank you again for that. And in 2006, you sold 4,000 bottles of Reggae Reggae sauce at the Notting Hill Carnival.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to perfect the sauce?
Well, I've been going with it for quite some time, but I think one of the reasons why perhaps it didn't jump out at me that it was a business, because I always did it as a hot pepper sauce. And that wasn't what I wanted to express out there to the new customers that I'd gathered. Because Caribbean jerk sauce, typically in those days, was just hot, burn off your face type thing like that. Nobody in the carnival was really doing a sauce that could go on the table with Heinz tomato ketchup and all these other sauces that were out there. That wasn't really just hot, blow your face off. It was just also full of flavor as well. And it wasn't until when I discovered that I needed to add something else towards it, that to make it really be something that mainstream people could take. I mean, when people used to come to the carnival in the early days, that man, they said, just give me some hot sauce, Levi, man. And you give him a little bit of the scotch bonnet, and it's like, wow. But you give that to a mainstream person that comes with a family and you want to sell the whole family your product. You don't want to just to sell the dad who can take the hot sauce. I wanted to sell the chicken to the whole family that could to do it. So I realized after some time at the carnival that I needed to change my original idea of the recipe and make it more European. I know it sounds like selling out, but if there are people that's listening to your podcast right now, I will tell them if you want to get to that next level and you've always been struggling and wonder why have been struggling with your great product, it's because you haven't decided to change and change with the market. So I found my market and I knew that it was a mainstream market. So I had to change the sauce from it being, like I said, burn off your face type hot, but to something that was really had lots of flavors. And when you put it on your food, no matter what it is, it would sort of help and enhance and drag out some flavors out of it. So it wasn't until I discovered that it started maybe 2004 that I actually tried changed it from originally how it was before and started now to build it around reggae and put more flavors into it and change it from the original one. So I would say about 4 years in the making and then eventually discovered and drank.
Put some music in my food for me and give me some reggae, reggae sauce. Hot reggae, reggae sauce. It's so nice, I had to name it twice. I called it reggae, reggae sauce. Hot reggae, reggae sauce. Put some reggae sauce on your list. Thank you. My name is Levi Roots. I'm looking for 50,000 for 20% in my Reggae Reggae sauce. I've been in the music business for over 30 years. I'm a producer, a singer, a songwriter, and a chef. For 15 of those 30 years, I've been doing the Notting Hill Carnival, supplying most of the stalls with my secret recipe sauce I entitled Reggae Reggae Sauce. So without further ado, I like just make you have a look. Right, the sauce. What is the sauce? Reggae Reggae sauce is a hot to mild jerk barbecue sauce. It replaces the typical tomato ketchup or your hot pepper sauce. Tomato ketchup is boring, no flavors, just tomato. Hot pepper sauce is hot, no flavors, it ruins your food. With Reggae Reggae sauce, it retains the flavors of the garlic, the peppers, the coriander, the scallion, and all the herbs and spices which we put in. I've got a very nice order from a meat company in Yorkshire for, wait for it, 2.5 million liters of Reggae Reggae sauce as their first orders. We've had just like a shook hands on a deal. I've had a nice letter from them, which I have with me. Now, all we have to do now is just try and get production up to standard. Any questions, please?
Thank you so much for that answer. Your Reggae Reggae sauce is amazing. I use it the whole of my time at university, so I'd recommend to all my viewers, buy Reggae Reggae sauce, is brilliant. But following on from that, your pitch in Dragon's Den was just iconic. You just made everyone so happy when you came in with your guitar and you sang your song, put some music in your food. So, and you secured a £50,000 investment from Peter Jones and Richard Farleigh. So please tell us about how you managed to put a successful pitch together and the values you drew upon to get that result.
It was a long time preparing to get myself to where I am, to be the Levi Roots who I am now. And that's what I wanted to sell. And that's why I said it was difficult for me to get notified before, because normally people just want to know, what are you selling? It's food? Okay, what does it taste like? You know what I mean? But I think as a business person, I knew that one, you will have the product. But if you want other people to invest their money into you, you've got to have just more than just the product, the sauce, which is fantastic and everything. It's got to be about the person who is selling the sauce now. Those two have to come together. I knew I had a great sauce because, like I said, I'd selling it for many years at the carnival. I'd sold that 4,000 bottle that you mentioned the year before I was in Dragon's Den. So I knew that mainstream people had wanted this new type flavor that I created. But when I was asked to go on Dragons Den, I knew that now I had to go with something else because I'd never seen the show. I'd never heard about Dragons Den. I was discovered while I was at an event, and I was there singing the song, put some music in my food, and the crowd was there, and a producer from the show was just apparently being in the audience and saw me telling the story of my grandma singing songs and all that, and gave me a card to call her that maybe I wanted to be on Dragons Den. So when I started to tell a few people now that I'd been offered to go on the show, and I'm really excited now, everybody was saying, no, Levi, don't go on the show, don't take the guitar, don't sing, because nobody else had ever sang on the show. So in some ways, they were trying to protect me in some way. They weren't saying don't go on the show, but I think a lot of people were saying, don't change that formula of going like a well-spoken person and you've got your sauce and you're talking, you be who you're not, really. But I thought that I wanted to be me. I wanted to be the dreadlocks Rasta man who loves his grandma's cooking and can tell the story about her and everything is within the sauce. And I can express my music, which was always been my plan A. I can express that. So I ignored everybody that said to me, don't go and break the mold of Dragons Den. And I went with my soul, I went with my heart. I was saying that if the Dragons are going to invest, I want them to invest in the man, in Levi Roots, not just in Reggae Reggae sauce. That's just one sauce. I felt I could do more. I wanted to do a TV show. I felt like I could bring Caribbean food to the forefront. I wanted to have restaurants and all that, all under the Levi Roots brand. So I had to express who I was in entirety, and that's definitely with the guitar. So to answer your question, I think it was because I was me, and that's another, lesson I can say to people out there: be you, because without those two things, the product, which has to be a great idea in the first place, but next is all about who is representing that company or that product. It has, especially if you're asking somebody else to invest in there, and I'm sure that Peter Jones and Richard Farleigh will say that. Even though they invested in the sauce, yes, because they tried it and it was great when they tried it on the show. But it was also about, that audacity of you coming and breaking the mold and singing a reggae song on a show about business and enterprise. If you can do that, then you surely deserve investment.
Thank you so much. Your pitch on Dragons Den is actually the most successful pitch in the history of the show. And yeah, so just thank you for coming with your guitar and just livening it up.
Well, I just to add to that, I got to say that even when we watched it back as a family afterwards, even though we knew I'd won the week before because it was showing just 1 week after, and I had to keep really quiet and didn't give out that I'd won at all. And then we watched it together, but the show was. The way it was filmed, it was so gripping and so dramatic that you saw the sweat and the beads and everything falling off my face. But I got myself into a bit of a trouble with the numbers. But even we then thought that I'm not going to get through because it was that dramatic. But I'm sure that I think the public that was watching thought to them, that could be anybody. That could be them. You don't have to be the absolute perfect to be able to get through your business or to do something fantastic in life. All you have to do is to believe in your own self, and hopefully that whoever is judging you will be somebody can see that that's something that's investable if you are you and not trying to be pretending to be someone else.
Oh, thank you so much for that. It was really powerful. So when Reggae Reggae sauce was distributed in Sainsbury's, it sold out immediately. So what do you believe contributed to the success of Reggae Reggae sauce in Sainsbury's when it was first launched?
Well, I think it was because of the TV at first. I've got to be honest, because when someone is have the audacity to come out of themselves and do something, and the public see you, they will want to engage in some respect. So I think those first sales that were brilliant, by the way, I don't think will ever be redone by a Caribbean product. We were outselling the main source of Heinz tomato ketchup. I mean, is that a dream or what? If you have a new product that's coming. But that's all said and done, and I give thanks to the public for going out then and buying it and us breaking that record. But for me, the key thing is always about longevity, Mike. It's never about the short-term objective. So for me, when I look back now and see it's 15 years now we are celebrating, you know, that little guitar song and the sauce and everything like that. That's what, when I try and talk to people and say to them, look, encourage them, go to business, but be you, be very, all that kind of message that I try to give is always about long term. So great that we broke that record at first, and I walked into Sainsbury's when it first launched, and even brought my own bottle, you know, and just have that kind of memory. But the joy of it is all about the long term, that we've done it and we've did it that long, and we've managed to create an impact into the food market, food and drink market.
A Labour frontbencher has hit out at the television chef Jamie Oliver after finding a packet of jerk rice sold under his brand, which doesn't contain all its essential ingredients. MP Dawn Butler, whose parents are from Jamaica, said this appropriation needs to stop. The microwave jerk rice product, which has just gone on sale in supermarkets, contains jalapeno chili, ginger and garlic, but not the allspice and Scotch bonnet peppers, which are integral to jerk seasoning. But when many cooks take influence and inspiration from travels abroad and put their own spin on recipes from around the world, isn't all food global nowadays? Well, with me now is the Jamaican-born chef and entrepreneur Levi Roots and the chef and restaurateur Bevo. Levi Roots, is Jamie Oliver guilty of cultural appropriation?
No, he's not. I totally don't believe that. I think what he's done, I think he hasn't done his research. And he also has forgotten that I actually taught him how to cook.
I saw that. So does that make it worse?
I went through all the process of it, because I myself, when I get it wrong, and I'm a Jamaican born, but sometimes I do get it wrong, and Jamaicans will say to me, Levi, you got to make sure that you get this right.
Thank you again. You are listed on AGK's Black History Month list of 6 inspirational figures. What advice? Wow. What advice would you give to young people that have been running a business for years? They don't feel like it's taken off, and they're at a point where they feel like giving up.
Yeah, that's one that, you know, I come across a lot. You start off with this great idea and this great enthusiasm, and then things peter out, you know, before you know it. It's one that will happen, but I think the only guard against that is that attitude of being resilient in business, being able to come again when it does happen. If there are reasons why ones are failing, then you need to look at the reasons where that's coming from, and not completely say, no, some people are just not good at business. It's not about that. There are reasons why you're failing, and I think it's to pinpoint. If one could pinpoint where that is, anyone can be successful. Now, I've proved it. I've always said that I don't think Peter Jones and Richard Farleigh turned me into an entrepreneur overnight just because they invested their money into my business. I was always me, because it is about the long term and how you can continue, and that cannot be taught. So if you are in business, it's obviously you have it in you in some ways. So whatever is going wrong is just to pinpoint that and just to make some slight alterations there. But the key thing, as always, is to surround yourself with like-minded people so that you can always have information to help you, whatever, you know, in your failings. But like I said, if you've already started in your business, and especially if you felt that it was going well, it's always just to find out, you know, what are the missing pieces in there so that you can make corrections.
Thank you. That was very inspirational. You're actually a very talented musician. You were nominated for a Merbo for your for the reggae music you were doing. You've also performed with the likes of James Brown and Maxi Priest, and you were friends with Bob Marley. So please just tell us a bit more about your music, because I've listened to some of your songs and they're really catchy. So please just tell us a bit more about your music.
Music for me started with my grandma again. You know, as I said, she was a great singer in the Baptist church in Clarendon. As a little kid, I can still hear her voices now singing these great gospel songs that she used to sing. And one of the things that I took away when I when I left her to come to the UK was that music and that voice and that being able to put myself at peace just by thinking about her. So music was always in my blood just through that. And I discovered sound systems, as a teenager. I followed the sound system called Sir Coxsone, and became a part of that, a huge part of how music was promoted in those days. Nowadays it's about the internet and making videos and all that. But back then in the 70s, if you had a hit record and you wanted it to, if you had a tune and you wanted it to be a hit record, if the sound systems are not playing it, then you have no chance at all. So it was a really important part of the genre back then. So again, it allowed me to be able to express myself, with this musical message that my grandma had given to me through sound systems. I started to record. I first recorded a song called Poor Man's Story that was telling the story of us on the dole in Brixton. We used to go and sign on every Thursday to be able to get our little checks because unemployment was so rife back then. And it was part of that reasons why people were rioting in the 70s and all that kind of stuff that we read about back then. There was a reason for that. And it was all because we couldn't get employment. And I wrote Poor Man's Story because of that. It was recorded by Levi Roots and produced by him. I went on to form my band, Matic 16. Again, I had some successes there. Band split up, went solo as Levi Roots, went to Jamaica, recorded and formed new relationship there. And worked with my heroes, the Bob Marley thing, which I love to tell because he's my hero. Again, that was a great thing getting to know the man and having some sort of part in his life here when he came over here. Worked with Lee Scratch Perry, who passed away recently, which is another giant of our time. Again, I was blessed to be able to be there when Nelson Mandela came to Brixton. Again, it's these surreal moments that I ended up with the birthday cake while the great man was coming down the steps in the Recreation Center in Brixton. I was chosen to hold the birthday cake and to sing "Happy Birthday, Mr. President" to Nelson Mandela. These are just magical moments that I think that my grandma has just always been blessing me and managing to sort of put me into this position, because I feel so lucky and so blessed when I tell my story and I wake up and realizing the amazing things that I've gone through. And still not forgetting, as I say, some of the parts that I wouldn't want to happen to anyone, but still giving thanks that wherever it's from, to me, I have to give thanks for that, that it's come through these avenues and don't look back as negative, some of these parts. They're only part of my life. But again, the music is perhaps the most wonderful part, because all my beautiful stories that I tell about singing to Mandela, playing football with Bob Marley, touring with Maxi Priest in Kenya and Africa, all my beautiful stories involve music.
Thank you. And yeah, your music's really lively and it makes me happy. So, what advice would you give to young Black entrepreneurs that are struggling in terms of startups? So, a lot of young Black people will look up to you because you're a huge figure. So, what advice would you give to them?
Absolutely. One of the key things that I did in my journey was to find my market. That's perhaps was one of the biggest move that I did, to be able to do what a lot, your question is about young people starting out. How do you get to that next level? What do you do? What are the movements? That was my greatest movement, was to recognize that I had to find a market to fit with what I was selling. Because the way I did it before was just having a product and thing that I could sell to everyone. If you ask me who was my market, I would say they're everyone. And to me, that would make sense, because I did want to sell to everyone. But it is the wrong way to have your concept. You have to find that niche market, who your customer is, and even narrow down your customer to one person, who they look like. If you'd say, who is your customer? What are their names? Who they look like? Are they boy, girl, whole, young, middle age, or what have you? And that's what I discovered. And I discovered that my market wasn't necessarily in my local, where I was trying to sell the Caribbean sauce to Caribbean people. It never worked. Everybody was just bumming me and saying, no, Levi Roots, go back and make some music and thing. Don't try and sell us some sauce, but we can make our own sauce. I was getting that all. It took me a while to actually get it. That I had to come out of my comfort zone and thinking that I could sell to everybody and find that person who I was trying to sell to. So when I actually changed the sauce now from being really hot and put it to flavors and saying that I'm going to try and find my market, that was the biggest thing that I ever did. So in some ways, that's my message to people out there. If you have started and you find that things are not working for you, normally when things are not working, meaning that you're not getting enough sales. There could be other problems, but the most logical problem is when people are saying things are not working is you're not getting enough sales. And the reasons why you're not getting enough sales is because you're not going to your customers. You're not ciphering out, all the hard work, because it creates a lot of hard work when you're just selling in the dark. Because most of the times you're out there and you're not selling and you're just canvassing, doing nothing. You're wasting money, you're wasting petrol, you're wasting energy when you could be doing all something else. If you knew where your market was or who to target, like now, I suppose the internet is a great way of narrowing down that target. But when I started, we didn't really have the internet. So I had to go out there and realize that it's not necessarily only Caribbean people I want to sell reggae reggae sauce to. I want to sell reggae reggae sauce to mainstream people who perhaps didn't know about Caribbean food. But here is a sauce that I've created that I think will be for them. And I had to go out there in the English shires, in the English countryside. I decided that that was my market. And it was while I was at one of these events in the English countryside type thing that I was discovered by the lady, as I says, that was the producer of Dragon's Den. So find your market, guys. If you are because of sales, it's because you're probably shooting in the dark. You just need to narrow down who you're selling to and know your customers so you can go right to the shop. And I think then you probably will get more success.
Thank you so much for that. And Reggae Reggae Sauce is one of the most successful investments in Dragon's Den history. So please, can you tell us about how having the business mentor and someone like Peter Jones helped you to make Reggae Reggae Sauce as successful as it is today?
Well, mentoring is a fantastic thing. And I'd say to everybody, get yourself a mentor, because your mentor not only can help you with your business plan and do all that kind of stuff that mentor do, but the best thing that a mentor can do, can pick up the phone and phone somebody important that you need. Because there's no point that you're going to have a mentor if that person doesn't have some good friends or some people that's connected to your business. So you need to choose a mentor that knows your route of customer that you need to go to. Now, when Peter invested in me, one of the key things that I said before, he never turned me into an entrepreneur overnight. I was always able to sell Levi Roots and sell myself. Because as a musician, that's what you do. You sell you. So the only thing that he needed, that I needed really, and Peter was brilliant at that, was just to pick up the phone and make a call. And for me at the time, he called the chief of Sainsbury's at the time. He was friends with him. His name was Justin King. And Peter picked up the phone and called his friend Justin King and says, did you see Dragons Den last week? Levi Roots is on there. I'm going to bring Levi around to see you. And Peter and I went along to see Justin in Sainsbury's. And the rest is history, because obviously now I was in front of the man. He had seen the show. He knows what's expected, because he knows that if your product is on Dragon's Den and everybody seems to have liked it, then if it's in the store, then it's all good. Sainsbury's took it on for 6 months exclusively to them. And that's when we broke all those records, as I mentioned, about outselling and Instamark to catch up. So it's just that phone call. So again, that's what mentoring is about, guys. So, get yourself some good mentor, because he or she will perhaps be able to make that call and call that distributor or call whoever you need to be able to make your business connect.
Thank you so much for that answer. And the final question I'd like to ask you is that your brand Reggae Reggae is now a multi-million-pound brand. So please, can you just share with us just a couple of the lessons you've learned across your journey that can just inspire some of the young people watching this interview?
But I think one of the things that I think I needed when I got into the world of business to do is to being able to fit in when you do start to have success. Because we talk a lot about, the struggles of coming up and that sort of stuff like that. But that's business is not just about that. There's also some as well who's settling nicely, but still need to know where that next level, gets you. And for me, when I started to be in boardroom meeting with people, as I said, like Peter Jones and Richard Farleigh and these fantastic people who had invested in me, I think one of the things I learned that Levi Roots from Brixton Ghetto, the front line that was hustling and doing all those stuff that we mentioned earlier, you would have thought that they wouldn't have come in to be any good to me in this position. But actually, Micah, they were key towards my success going forward. My ability to engage all comes from that hustling times of where you are and your community and who you are as a person and your friends and all that. So what I'm saying is that when you do break through that door, it's not about forgetting about where you're coming from. However bad the picture may be, I think in some way you need to incorporate that within. If it driven you then to get to where you are now, don't let it go. Still hold on to it. So I've held on to that part of my life to help me be able to can sort of fashion for my brand. Levi Roots is Reggae Reggae sauce. It says reggae when you look at the brand. It's red, gold, and green. It says that he's a Rastaman. Rastaman carries a lot of caveats and that sort of stuff. Certain things that you can't do, certain things that you can do. It's Jamaican in its entirety. So I think that is what people are buying into. So for me, wasn't about just going into these rooms with big shots like Peter and Richard and start spooky like I'm an English boy and forgetting that, the real you's coming through. I think that's been my greatest weapon, is that at times I'm being able to tap into that, to be able to take my success forward. But it's that able, as I talked about earlier, to be resilient and being able to be a chameleon and change when you have to and be comfortable with whoever you are and being able to get into whatever conversation is thrown at you. So, it is about learning as you go along, but be you, which is the key thing I'm trying to say. Wherever you are, bring that with you and be the best of you. That's the right point I'm trying to say.
Thank you for such an excellent interview, Levi. Your resilience and determination has really inspired me. I know it inspired the audience too. So just thank you so much for coming on.
Cheers, Micah. One love and respect.
But you've got hake today, your
Yes,
chosen
I have.
fish.
Absolutely. And this dish in the Caribbean, normally, it's used using snapper or other fishes. But I think as we're talking about sustainable, I think hake is absolutely wonderful. And for the ceviche, I think a lot of people probably has never sort of done a Caribbean ceviche. It's onion and peppers in there, just frying away nicely. Just going to add a little bit of vinegar in there.
It's also colourful, isn't it?
And it's summer. It absolutely is summer. So that's going away nicely. All we're going to do now, we've got the hake. But it's my type of weather. It's a Caribbean type weather. Absolutely. Yeah. So what I've done, I've just chopped up a bit of, thyme, Scotch bonnets and scallion and that.
Scotch bonnet's the really hot one.
It is. And here's you've got our hake here, which is a nice white fish. I mean, here, if you are using rainbow trout is good. Coley fish is good also too, but you got to be careful that it is sustainable. And if you're not sure, have a look on the pack and you will see the blue sign which tells you if this is a sustainable fish or not, and just helps you along the way.
So you can do this just before you cook it? You don't need to
just before you cook it. Or you can put it in the fridge if you want to get the flavors so that to seep in a bit more. But fish, as soon as you start to cook it, the flavors come.
Don't rub your eye with that now,
I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. And I'm just going to fry it up here in the pan. Oh, I love that sound. Yes. In the pan it goes. This one you can do in the oven, or you can finish off in the oven afterwards.
See, I quite like doing fish in the oven because I know people say, well, if it's fresh, it won't smell, but I don't agree. Whenever I cook fish, fresh as you like, my house smells a bit of fish.
Yes, it is. Spray a little bit of vinegar on it,
okay.
and it helps. It actually helps to sort of dumb down the smell. Oh, that's smelling nice and lovely already.
So this is good. The hake is fleshy, it's meaty, there's a good
Yes.
bite in it. What's it like for bones? It's not too bad, is it?
It's not too bad, and let the fishmonger do the work for you. You know, let him get rid of the bones, get rid of the heads, and I know some people don't like the eyes of fish and that sort of stuff. So let him do the work. So that's fine nicely away there.
If you did do it in the oven, Levi, how long would you bake it for?
20 minutes or so,
Yeah.
just to get the top done. I think when you do it this way, it's great, but turning it over, it's a bit yucky and stuff. So leave it like that in the oven, and the top gets done nicely.
Well, we've got a minute
there
and a half
is your
before we've got a
ceviche.
link to the
Absolutely.
weather.
And here is what if you pass
Okay,
me
so
that
there's-
spatula, please, dear Ruth, thank you very much. Here we have one done already. So all you need to do now is just to put it on there. And because you don't want to cook through your onions and peppers. I like them when they're
Like a bit of
actually
bite.
half done. Yes. Just put it on there. And you can actually take the pan to the table and serve, as I'm going to do it here for us. So here we go. Let's get it up there. Ah, yes.
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
You serve up, darling?
Wonderful.
Can I serve Heidi, mother? So you just do that with all the vegetables underneath?
Yes, yeah,
That's it.
absolutely. Again, when it's in the oven, it will all come together, and the top will be done nicely and everything like that. But the vegetables has to be crunchy.
that colourful
Let me get
veg.
Don't eat without me.
Very nice. Very nice, my friend.
I'm just worried about that chilli. Just give me that little bit.
It's not hot.
All the spices.
It's a nice
there.
fresh flavour.
It's a nice
Yeah.
meaty fish,
Very
isn't it?
crunchy vegetables. You can actually hear what's going on. You know it's fresh. It's brilliant.
I tell you what,
That is delicious.
it tastes the way your shirt looks.
Oh,
Spot
thank
on.
you.
Spot on. Good seeing you, mate.